Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a huge paradox, one that affects billions of people, but is kind of hiding in plain sight. We're talking about India's water.
You've probably heard this line before, right? It's one of those classic quotes. And honestly, it absolutely nails the paradox we're digging into today. You know, when you picture Earth from space, it's this stunning blue marble, just covered in water. But that picture, well, it's not the whole story. Not even close.
So that leads us right to the big question, the one that probably popped into your head already. I mean, if 3/4 of our planet is water, how on earth are we facing water scarcity? It doesn't really add up, does it? It feels completely backwards. And that's exactly the puzzle we're going to piece together today.
All right, let's jump right in. To really unpack this great water paradox, we have to start with the basics, what we all learn in school about water. But then we're going to slam that up against a prediction that is, frankly, pretty terrifying. Okay, so here's what we all think we know, right? We're taught that about 75% of the Earth's surface is covered in water, and we learn about the water cycle, the whole hydrological thing, evaporation, clouds form, it rains, and the whole process starts over. So fresh water is constantly getting replenished. It's the textbook definition of a renewable resource. In theory, we should never, ever run out.
And yet, here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Despite all that, despite this seemingly endless cycle, look at this prediction. By 2025, and let's be real, that's practically tomorrow, we're looking at nearly 2 billion people living in what's called absolute water scarcity. Think about that number. 2 billion. Something in that perfect, renewable system is seriously broken. The paradox isn't just a thought experiment, it's a looming reality.
So what gives? If the problem isn't that the Earth is literally running out of water, or that it just stopped raining, then what is going on? Well, the real causes are a lot more complicated. And honestly, they have a lot more to do with us, how we live, how we eat, how we build our world.
Okay, first things first, we need to get something straight. Water scarcity isn't just one thing. It's actually two very different problems. On one side, you've got quantitative scarcity. That's the easy one to imagine. It's when there just isn't enough water, period. Think about the deserts in Rajasthan. Not enough rainfall, super dry. That's a quantity problem. But then there's qualitative scarcity. And this one is, in some ways, even scarier. This is when there's plenty of water around, rivers, lakes, groundwater, but it's so polluted with industrial gunk, pesticides, and human waste that it's completely unusable. It's poison. So you can be surrounded by water and still be dying of thirst. It's a huge distinction. So what's driving all this pressure? It's not one single villain. It's more like a perfect storm of 4 big drivers all hitting at once. First, overexploitation. Simple math, really. A huge growing population just needs more water, not just for drinking, but to grow food for everyone. Second, and this one's a big one, intensive agriculture. Farming is the thirstiest industry on the planet. To boost crop yields, we're pumping groundwater for irrigation like there's no tomorrow, and those underground water levels are dropping fast. Third, industrialization. All our factories and manufacturing plants. They use a massive amount of water. Plus, they need a ton of electricity, and a lot of that comes from hydroelectric dams. And finally, urbanization. As more and more people move to cities, the demand for water and energy just skyrockets. It's this cycle where everything we do to grow and modernize puts more and more strain on our most essential resource. Okay, so faced with this massive challenge, what was the plan? Well, after India's independence, the thinking was, go big. The solution was seen as an engineering one. Let's control the rivers. Let's build massive, multi-purpose projects to harness all that water. And the most visible symbol of that plan? Dams. And this vision was really powerful. You have to imagine the optimism of that era. India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, famously called these dams the temples of modern India. And that's exactly how they were seen. They weren't just concrete and steel. They were symbols of progress, of a nation taking control of its destiny. The idea was that these temples would do it all: irrigate farms, power new industries, and stop devastating floods. It was a grand, top-down vision for a modern nation. But here's where we get to the heart of the conflict. The promise of these dams was enormous. I mean, look at the pros. Irrigation to feed a growing nation, electricity to power it, a steady water supply for cities, and controlling those wild monsoon floods. It sounds like a perfect solution, right? But the reality, well, it turned out to be a whole lot messier. When you build a dam, you fundamentally change a river. You disrupt its natural flow. This can actually make flooding worse downstream because you're trapping all the natural sediment.
it devastates aquatic ecosystems. You end up submerging vast tracts of forest and fertile land forever. And maybe the most painful part? These massive projects displaced millions of people, forcing them to leave the land their families had lived on for generations. So those temples of modern India, they started to look a lot more like troublemakers.
So with all these problems piling up, people started asking, is there another way? If these giant, top-down engineering projects have so many downsides, what's the alternative? And the answer, for many, wasn't to look forward to some new technology, but to look back to the incredible, time-tested wisdom that was already there, hidden in plain sight.
And what they rediscovered was just incredible. For centuries, people all across India had developed these brilliant, hyperlocal ways to harvest rainwater. These weren't one-size-fits-all mega projects. They were incredibly clever systems designed to work with the specific landscape. Up in the Himalayas, they built what are called gulls or coals. These are basically clever diversion channels that zigzag down the mountainside to bring water to farm fields. Over in the floodplains of Bengal, instead of fighting the floods, they built inundation channels to guide the floodwater exactly where they needed it for irrigation. And in the bone-dry deserts of Rajasthan, they built cottons and johads, structures that would catch the little rain they got, letting it soak into the ground and keep the soil moist for farming. It's a completely different philosophy, not about conquering nature, but about working in harmony with it.
Let's zoom in on one of the most elegant of these systems, the rooftop harvesting you find in Rajasthan. It is just genius in its simplicity. So you've got your house, right? The rainwater that hits the roof is channeled through a pipe. Now, they're smart about it. They let that first bit of rain wash away all the dust and dirt from the roof. Then, once it's clean, they start collecting the rest. That water then flows through a really simple filter, just sand and bricks, nothing fancy, and into a big underground storage tank called a tanka. And this water, which they call palar pani, is considered the purest form of water. It's their lifeline for drinking through the long, hot, dry season. And listen, this isn't just some quaint historical stuff. These techniques are absolutely vital today. Get this, in the state of Tamil Nadu, it is now mandatory, it's the law, for every single house to have a rainwater harvesting system. And here's the real mindbender for you, Shillong. It's a city near one of the wettest places on the entire planet. They get insane amounts of rain, and yet they face acute water shortages. Why? Because all that water just washes away. So almost every single household there depends on rooftop rainwater harvesting to get through the year. It just goes to show you, it's not just about how much rain you get, it's about how much you can save.
Okay, so this brings us to the big question. Where do we go from here? We've seen the two extremes, right? On one hand, the massive, ambitious dams, full of promise, but also full of problems. And on the other, the small-scale, brilliant traditions that have worked for centuries. So what's the path forward? And the answer, the really crucial takeaway here, is that it's not a choice between the two. This isn't some battle where we have to pick a side, team big dam versus team raindrop. Life's just not that simple. There is no single magical silver bullet solution that's going to fix everything. Instead, the future has to be about an integrated approach, a both-and kind of thinking. And we're actually starting to see this happen. Look at some of the big government programs today. You have something like the Jal Jeevan Mission. Its goal is huge. Use modern infrastructure and engineering to get piped, clean water to every single rural home. That's the big part of the solution. But at the same time, you have the Atal Bhujal Yojana. This program is totally different. It focuses on the community level, on changing behavior, on teaching people how to manage their local groundwater sustainably. It's all about shifting from a mindset of just using water to one of conserving it. So you see, it's the two ideas working together, modern infrastructure paired with ancient wisdom and community responsibility.
So that's what we'll leave you with, this one big question to think about. When you imagine the future of water, what do you see? Is it one more giant dam? A massive feat of engineering meant to solve the problem for everyone? Or is it a million individual raindrops, saved one by one, in millions of homes across the country? The real answer, of course, is that we're going to need both. We'll need the big plans and the small, personal actions, all working together. Thanks so much for joining me on this one.